When I was in college, my parents gave me a rather unconventional gift, a baby brother. David, as he was named, looked eerily similar to me. Comparing his face with my old childhood photos was like staring at a carbon copy. My mom, brimming with pride, cradled David and announced, "Our family genes are too good not to pass on. Look at this face. He's going to be a real heartbreaker someday." I couldn't bring myself to burst her bubble. After all, as the daughter she was so proud of, I'd only managed one lackluster relationship by then. Could David really grow up to be the Casanova she imagined? Highly doubtful. By the time I'd graduated college and been working for 3 years, David had reached 2nd grade. He was, without a doubt, God's way of testing my patience. He climbed trees, jumped into streams, raided bird nests, you name it. And when school started, he managed to consistently rank at the bottom of his class. He didn't have the guts to tell our parents, so guess who had to face the teachers on his behalf? Me, the beautiful older sister. This semester, David got a new math teacher, and things only got worse. His grades plummeted further, and soon I was summoned to the school again. In the teacher's office, David clung to my coat hem like a model student, introducing me with faint innocence, "Mr. Spencer, my mom's here." Then, turning to me, he added, "Mom, this is my math teacher, Mr. Derek Spencer." I opened my mouth to greet him, but the words died in my throat the moment I met Derek's icy gaze. Swallowing hard, I adjusted my tone. "Long time no see, Derek." He raised an eyebrow, his voice laced with mock surprise. "Hi, Jessica. I must say I'm shocked. I didn't expect that 3 years after our breakup, you'd have a son this big." David's head whipped up, staring at me in stunned silence. At that moment, we both had the same thought: we're doomed. Half an hour later, my mom stormed into the office, casting a withering glance at David before marching inside to have a private word with Derek. That night, David got an earful from our parents, and I received a message from none other than my ex-boyfriend, Derek Spencer. Back in college, Derek had been the campus heartthrob, the kind of unattainable man every girl admired from afar. But I, being bold and reckless, pursued him relentlessly for a year until I finally won him over. We had a passionate 3-year relationship, and when everyone assumed he'd propose after graduation, I pulled the rug out from under him. I broke things off and sent him reeling straight into a plane ticket to Germany for grad school. My abrupt breakup turned me into a legend on campus. His text was brief but pointed: "You left your water bottle in the office." Attached was a photo of the bottle, a familiar one. I realized it was the same bottle Derek had given me back when we were dating. Earlier that day, as David cowered behind me while Mom scolded him, I'd completely forgotten I had it in my hand. I replied, "Could you give it to David tomorrow? He can bring it back to me." His response came instantly, "No. You come and get it yourself. After all, it was my gift to you." The water bottle was a gift from Derek, one I had kept for years. Great. The heartless ex-persona I'd carefully curated when we broke up was completely shattered now. The next day, I showed up at the school. Derek was seated in the office, wearing a crisp white shirt. He sat by the window, pen in hand, calmly grading papers. That image took me back to our first encounter. He had been just as quiet, just as poised, yet effortlessly commanded everyone's attention. "Jess, what are you standing there for, lost in thought?" I was startled by a voice behind me. Derek looked up just in time to see David surrounded by a group of little girls, all curiously watching. "Is Mr. Spencer calling you here to scold me again?" David asked, his tone full of self-awareness. Clearly, he knew his mischief all too well. Before I could respond, the little girls turned their attention to Derek. Their voices overlapped as they complained, "Mr. Spencer, David is bothering us." I widened my eyes and looked at my 7-year-old brother. Was he really turning into a little Casanova after all? David stamped his feet, flustered. "No, I wasn't. I was just talking." But the girls weren't having it. "He told each of us he'd marry us when we grow up," they pouted indignantly. I felt the need to say something to prove I was a responsible sister. "David, how could you say that? You're not respecting the girls, and you're definitely not respecting yourself." Behind me, Derek let out a quiet chuckle. I froze, suddenly remembering someone had once said similar words to me, "Jessica, you need to focus on yourself." Learn to respect yourself. But come on, it's college. What's the point if I don't date someone? I was quoting Derek's old lecture right in front of Derek himself. You two really are siblings, Derek quipped, amused. He reassured the little girls and sent them on their way. Meanwhile, David and I stood off to the side, sharing the same dejected expressions. Derek returned to the office, handed me the water bottle, and grabbed his briefcase. Let's go. I'll take you to dinner. We need to talk. Under normal circumstances, hearing dinner would excite both me and David, but with Derek involved, neither of us could muster any enthusiasm. David, in particular, ate his food in silence, staring down at his plate as if it held the secrets to the universe. I knew why. Back when we broke up, there were rumors that Derek had been spotted at a jewelry store, presumably buying a ring to propose. Instead, I'd blindsided him with a breakup. Now, sitting across from him, I asked awkwardly, "How was Germany?" "Not bad. I stayed busy with school." "No one around to distract me with a relationship," he said with a pointed edge. I lowered my head, pretending my plate was suddenly fascinating. Thankfully, Derek didn't linger on the topic and instead shifted to discussing David's studies. David shot me a pitiful look, as if silently pleading for my help. "Sorry, David. I have to let you take one for the team this time." After dinner, I declined Derek's offer to drive us home, dragging David to the subway instead. We sprinted to catch the train, and once inside, both of us clung to the poles, catching our breath. "Jess, is Mr. Spencer really your ex-boyfriend?" David asked between gasps. I nodded. "Did he like you a lot? Did he used to do whatever you asked?" I thought back. He probably did like me, maybe more than I deserved, and yes, he had a habit of indulging me back then. Seeing me nod, David's eyes lit up. "That's perfect. You should get back together with Mr. Spencer." I stared at David, utterly speechless. How could a 7-year-old come up with something like this? The people around us on the subway gave me odd looks, making me feel like I'd chosen the wrong train that day. "I mean it. If you get back together with Mr. Spencer, I can tell on him if he's ever mean to me," David continued. "How is he mean to you?" "He always makes me answer questions in class and he checks my homework really carefully," David complained. I stayed quiet for a while, then spent the rest of the ride trying to explain that it was because Derek cared about his performance as a student. "That's not true. Are you going to help me or not?" "I'm your brother," David insisted. "No, you're my nemesis," I replied half-jokingly. After thinking it over, I decided to give him a simple version of the story about Derek and me. David didn't say another word until we got off the subway, but as soon as we stepped outside, he shouted loud enough for everyone to hear, "So it's because you dumped Mr. Spencer that he doesn't like me now." Apparently, the kid had drawn some wild conclusions from my explanation. By the time we got home, David's eyes were red. He dropped his backpack at the door and ran into his room, sobbing loudly. "What's wrong with him?" "Usually he's thrilled when you pick him up from school," my mom asked, puzzled as she followed him to his room. Moments later, his wailing filled the entire house. Luckily, his heartbreak didn't last long. 3 days later, David came home proudly waving a homework book with a hand-drawn thumbs up on the cover. "Mr. Spencer said my homework's been really good lately, so he drew this just for me," he beamed as he showed me the simple sketch. But I wasn't looking at the drawing. I was lost in a memory. This wasn't just any sketch. I had taught Derek how to draw this thumbs up years ago, back in college. We were studying in the library together. I couldn't keep up with his pace, and after a while, I got so sleepy I was afraid I'd drool on the books. To stay awake, I started doodling in his notebook. I drew the same thumbs up and said, "Look, this is how you can praise kids when you become a teacher someday." Derek glanced at me, amused. "Stop doodling in my notebook," he said, but he didn't stop me as I filled the margins with little thumbs ups. And now he was using them. I handed the notebook back to David, who was watching me curiously. "Jessica, you should really get back together with Mr. Spencer," he said. "You don't even have a boyfriend, and all the teachers at school like him." "How do you know that?" "Everyone knows Miss Susie, the English teacher, always blushes when she talks about him." David looked very pleased with himself. "But I think Mr. Spencer should be with you instead. If people ask, I can say he's my future brother-in-law." That'd be so cool. So it all boiled down to his ego. I clamped my hand over his mouth and pushed him toward his desk. Go do your homework. David didn't bring it up again after that, and I assumed he'd let it go. That is, until a week later when I received a message from Derek. David says the reason you haven't dated anyone all these years is because you've been waiting for me. Fabricating rumors is easy. Debunking them is exhausting. As soon as I got home, I gave David a light smack on the head. He clutched the back of his head and yelled, "But it's true. You haven't dated anyone because you're still waiting for Mr. Spencer." I froze. If I denied it, wouldn't I just be admitting that I've been single all these years? Jess, you should really be with Mr. Spencer. He was so happy when he found out you haven't dated anyone. David smirked and turned his head away dramatically. How do you know he was happy? I asked. This afternoon, he let us watch a movie. He never does that, David replied. It was a movie about dental care. Today is World Oral Health Day, I said, trying to brush it off. Honestly, I couldn't deal with this kid. But David remained convinced, muttering about it all evening. Later that night, I lay in bed, staring at Derek's message on my phone. After much deliberation, I finally typed out a reply. Well, not exactly. There were a few people, but I just haven't met the right one yet. The message sent, and within 3 seconds, my phone buzzed with a response. Is it because no one's more suitable than me? Great. The once untouchable Derek had transformed into a full-blown straight shooter. I thought you were waiting for me, he continued. After all, you were the one who said you'd love me forever. I stared at his words, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. That was years ago. I finally typed back, just consider it a lie I told. But I took it seriously, and just like that, Derek's message kept me awake all night. The next day, I dragged myself to work, dark circles under my eyes. My coworkers were startled as they passed my desk. Our workload isn't that heavy lately. What happened to you? One teased. Staying up late for love? I forced a weak smile. Another coworker, Lily, patted my shoulder knowingly. Take it from me. Choose someone who loves you more than you love him. Like Nate from Tech. He's been trying so hard to win you over. Lily had been playing matchmaker between me and Nate for weeks. As if on cue, Nate appeared. Jessica, busy today? Want to grab dinner after work? Nate had recently returned from Germany, and despite being in tech, he looked nothing like a typical programmer. His tailored suits and gold-rimmed glasses exuded a refined elegance. I remember you and Lily mentioning sushi last time. A new Japanese restaurant just opened nearby, he said. I was about to decline, but the word sushi gave me pause. It's just dinner, he added quickly. I've been wanting to try it too. We can just be dining buddies. Well, at this point, saying no felt almost rude. After work, we headed to the restaurant, where I shamelessly indulged in the sushi spread. Jessica, Nate asked suddenly, what kind of person do you like? Derek's face immediately came to mind, aloof yet gentle, like the moonlight you could admire but never touch, the kind of person who made your heart skip a beat at first sight. I actually already like someone, I admitted, though it was difficult to say out loud. Derek had always been my secret crush, even now. Nate was quiet for a long time before offering me a faint, understanding smile. By the time we finished eating, the sky had darkened. Nate offered to walk me home, but just as I was about to decline, someone called my name from behind. I turned around to see David holding Derek's hand. Both of them wore identical scowls. You said you were picking me up today, David complained. Oh no, I muttered. I had completely forgotten. When we got home, David threw his backpack onto the floor and retreated to his room, sulking. What's going on with you and David lately? You two have been at odds a lot, my mom asked. I awkwardly scratched my head. This time, it really was my fault. I had promised to pick David up from school, but I got caught up with work and completely forgot. David had waited with Derek at school for 2 hours. Eventually, Derek decided to walk him home. But just as they crossed a street, they spotted me walking out of a restaurant with Nate. After a lot of effort, I finally managed to consult David, only then did I remember to text Derek. Thank you so much for today. I completely forgot. His reply came swiftly, busy going on a date with another man. Derek's tone was impossible to miss, and I couldn't help but picture his expression from earlier, his dark, burning gaze practically drilling holes into Nate. In fact, it wasn't until David had complained that Derek was squeezing his hand too tightly that he seemed to snap out of it. "That's my coworker, Nate," I blurted out in defense. I just needed his advice on some work stuff. I wasn't even sure why I felt the need to explain myself to Derek. The whole thing only made me feel like I was trying to cover up something inappropriate. That night, after getting ready for bed, I received another text from Derek: "Do whatever you want. Who you date is none of my business." And he was right. We weren't together anymore. Who I dated shouldn't matter to him. Still, his words left me tossing and turning all night. For the following weeks, Derek didn't contact me again. Nate shifted his attention to another girl, and my life slowly returned to its usual rhythm. Until a month later, when David came home holding his latest report card. The stellar grades lit up my mom's face, and she immediately said she'd make David's favorite roast chicken for dinner. But David didn't look the least bit happy. With a sigh, he slid the drumstick onto my plate. Later that night, he crept into my room. "My dearest sister," he began dramatically, flopping onto my bed as if the weight of the world were on his shoulders. "Can you please just date Mr. Spencer? I can't take it anymore." David's voice trembled, and he looked like he was on the verge of tears. "Mr. Spencer checks my homework every day. He calls on me in every class. I'm so tired. Isn't it a good thing that Mr. Spencer cares about you?" I tried to comfort him, only to realize that he had already fallen asleep from sheer exhaustion. Could it really be that bad? Over the next couple of weeks, David's fatigue became increasingly obvious. He was so tired that he nearly fell asleep at the dinner table. It wasn't until then that I realized how serious things had gotten. I decided to text Derek: "Mr. Spencer, David did great on his latest report card. Thank you for your guidance, but he's been telling me he feels overwhelmed lately. Could you let him relax a little?" I crafted the message carefully, ensuring it sounded polite and professional. I felt rather proud of myself until Derek's reply arrived that afternoon: "He has great potential. David is a smart kid, and he should stay focused on his studies." The message made my blood boil. David didn't even watch TV anymore. The moment he got home, he buried himself in books. How much more focused could he be? Was this still about seeing me with Nate? I bit my lip and sent another message: "Do you give this level of attention to all your students, or are you still upset about what happened before? Are you questioning my professionalism as a teacher?" He shot back: "Of course not. I'm just pointing out the facts." I fumed silently. When had Derek become so petty? Derek didn't reply after that, but when David came home from school that evening, he wore a miserable expression. "Mr. Spencer scolded me today," he muttered gloomily. Why could Derek actually be giving David a hard time? What about his professional ethics as a teacher? I grabbed my phone, ready to demand an explanation, when a message from Derek popped up: "He's been more focused in class recently, but only during lessons. Outside of class, he's been playing card games obsessively. I've even confirmed he's been sneaking around at night to play, losing sleep over it." I froze. The accusation hit home. Rushing to David's room, I flipped over his mattress, and sure enough, an entire stash of trading cards spilled out. Judging by the sheer volume, he must have spent every last penny of his allowance on them. David stood sheepishly to the side, avoiding eye contact. Another message from Derek appeared: "I've already spoken to him. His card playing is now interfering with his rest. Maybe you could help enforce some boundaries at home. Also, the random name-calling in class is part of my teaching method. It's not excessive attention." Reading his message, I felt an overwhelming wave of guilt. I never thought he'd see me as that kind of person. Derek followed up: "I never thought you'd see me as that kind of person." Great. Now I'd gone and offended him too. Angry at myself, I called David over, confiscated all his cards, and gave him a lecture. Only afterward did I realize Derek might actually be upset. My hasty apology texts went unanswered, and I knew Derek. When he was angry, he'd freeze people out like this. Frustrated, I decided to apologize in person, taking advantage of the excuse to pick David up from school. I marched straight to Derek's office. There he was, sitting at his desk in a crisp white shirt, grading papers. The effortless elegance in his posture and demeanor was enough to outshine everyone around him. On the way in, I'd overheard some of the female teachers whispering about how handsome Mr. Spencer was. It instantly transported me back to college, the first time I'd caught wind of a strikingly good-looking student from another department. I had fallen for him the moment I saw him. "Do you need something?" His voice broke through my thoughts, catching me red-handed as I stared. "No, yes. I wanted to apologize for earlier. I was too quick to jump to conclusions without understanding the full picture." "All right. Apology accepted." That's it. I'd spent half an hour rehearsing what to say, and he cut me off after just one sentence. "At least let me treat you to dinner," I offered. "Consider it an apology meal." "There's no need. I have plans later." Before I could respond, a knock on the door interrupted us. "Mr. Spencer, the meeting is starting," a cheerful, melodic voice called. I turned to see an impossibly elegant woman with lively, sparkling eyes. Derek stood, gathered his papers, and walked out with her, leaving me behind. "Damn it," I muttered. On the way home, David tugged at my hand. "Did you see her? That's Miss Laura, our physics teacher." "Yeah, I saw. She's beautiful," I replied. "Miss Laura isn't just pretty. She likes Mr. Spencer. If you want to win him back, you better hurry." I knelt to meet David's gaze, my voice firm. "David, I did date Mr. Spencer before, but that's all in the past. There's no chance of us getting back together. Don't say things like that again. Someone might overhear." David blinked, confused, but nodded reluctantly. "But why? Mr. Spencer really likes you. Don't you like him?" I snapped, frustrated, yanking him upright and walking briskly toward home. David had to jog to keep up, but his chatter didn't stop. Whenever we visit Mr. Spencer in the office, he usually lets us play on our own, if it's not about school. But that one time I mentioned you, and he listened for a really long time. He even asked me some questions about you. He didn't send me back to class until it was about to start. Does Derek still have feelings for me? That thought lingered in my mind, stirring up memories I'd buried long ago. I remembered the day we broke up, a dreary, rainy day. Derek sat across from me, his fingers fidgeting nervously. I told him we should end things. The disbelief on his face was palpable. What followed was a cycle of questions escalating into a heated argument until we finally went our separate ways. As he walked away, I noticed the bulge of a small box in his pocket. I stayed in the restaurant for hours, crying, until the rain stopped. Just as I was about to leave, a delivery person approached me with a bouquet. "These are from Mr. Spencer. He ordered them weeks ago. Sorry for the delay. The storm made it hard to deliver earlier." A vivid bouquet of red roses accompanied by a simple card with just 3 words, "Marry me." My heart sank as I pieced it together. The small box in his pocket, the reservation he'd made weeks ago at this very restaurant he had planned to propose. What was supposed to be a joyful moment had turned into a breakup. I hadn't even seen the ring. Not long after, I heard Derek had left for Germany. I spent an entire day at the airport, watching flights take off and land, telling myself over and over, this is the life he deserves. I thought he'd stay abroad for good, yet 3 years later, we crossed paths again. After that, I avoided picking David up from school and deleted Derek's contact information. It was easier not to deal with the feelings that resurfaced every time I saw his name. My mom, eager to see me settle down, started arranging blind dates. David glanced at me but didn't bring up Derek's name again. Lately, I'd been approached by a surprising number of suitors. My mom lined up dates, all with men who seemed genuinely interested in me, yet I felt no spark with any of them. My mom grew exasperated. "What kind of person are you even looking for?" I couldn't answer her. All I knew was that the thought of being in a relationship made me uneasy. I couldn't shake the fear. What if I ended up with someone who was emotionally abusive, or worse, physically violent or unfaithful? "You're overthinking," my mom scolded. "When you were dating Derek, did you ever worry he'd hurt you?" Come to think of it, I hadn't back then. I was too mesmerized by his looks to consider such things. December arrived, bringing cold winds and an even colder reminder of the past. One evening, David pulled me aside as soon as he got home. "Do you really not like Mr. Spencer anymore?" It had been so long since he'd mentioned Derek. "Why do you ask?" I replied. "Today, I saw Miss Laura buying a huge bouquet of flowers. I heard she's taking them to Mr. Spencer's house. The beautiful teacher, she and Derek would make a great pair." I said nothing, but the news kept me awake that night. By morning, I had a fever. I called in sick and spent the day in bed, too exhausted to move. Just as I was finally drifting into a comfortable nap, noises from the apartment next door jolted me awake. It wasn't technically quiet hours yet, but the racket was relentless. Frustrated, I threw on my robe and opened my door, ready to confront whoever was causing the commotion. But the words caught in my throat. Across the hall, Derek stood by the staircase, directing a group of movers carrying a sofa into his apartment. "Hello, neighbor," he greeted casually, as if he hadn't just upended my world again. Derek moved in next door. That night, he showed up at my door, asking to borrow butter. The person most affected by this sudden proximity wasn't me, it was David. After dinner, he grabbed my arm dramatically. "Jess, my dear sister, I'm begging you. Just date Mr. Spencer already. If he's living next door, he'll keep watching me every day." I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "Sorry, can't help you there." Derek borrowing butter one night turned into borrowing a screwdriver the next. By the end of the week, even my mom started muttering under her breath. "Mr. Spencer seems so put together normally. Why is he so forgetful in his personal life?" Something felt off, but Derek kept a formal distance. Otherwise, he'd nod politely when we crossed paths, but nothing more. Meanwhile, David's daily life turned into a mild torment. He no longer dared venture downstairs to play with his friends. As Christmas approached, the air grew colder, and decorations began appearing everywhere. David's school didn't officially celebrate Christmas, but the teachers had a staff party planned, so classes were cancelled for the day. He texted me in the afternoon, reminding me to come home early. Toward the end of my workday, our company surprised us with a small gift, a single flower for everyone to take home. It was a thoughtful gesture to stave off the awkwardness of walking home empty-handed while couples exchanged lavish gifts. Humming a tune, I carried my flower back home. Just as I reached the building, I saw Derek throwing out the trash. Wasn't he supposed to be at a party? I greeted him casually and turned to head upstairs, but he grabbed my hand. "Do you have a date tonight?" I blinked, caught off guard, thinking of the family dinner I was heading to. I nodded. His hand fell away, his face visibly pale. Derek was still the same as ever, wearing next to nothing in the dead of winter. I opened my mouth to remind him to dress warmer, but my phone buzzed. David was calling, probably to nag me about being late. "It's none of your business anymore," I reminded myself, answering the call. I walked upstairs without another word. Our family Christmas dinner was warm and lively, filled with laughter and chatter. Halfway through, we realized we'd run out of salt. I volunteered to go to the store. Outside, the streets were a sea of festive red, alive with holiday cheer. Carrying the salt back, I glanced up at Derek's apartment. It was completely dark. He must be out. I sighed softly and rode the elevator upstairs. Just as I reached my door, fumbling for my keys, a large hand suddenly grabbed my waist and yanked me backward. The force was overwhelming. Before I could even scream, another hand clamped firmly over my mouth. "It's me," the familiar voice calmed my panic, but it only gave way to confusion. "Derek, what are you doing?" The stairwell was dim, barely illuminated by the weak light filtering through the small window. Derek moved us further into the shadows, pinning me against the wall. A faint scent of alcohol lingered in the air. "Merry Christmas," he said, completely out of sync with the tension in the air. One of his hands gently touched my face, his cold fingers sending a chill through me. "Weren't you on a date? Why are you back? Let me go. I want to spend the time with my family." "Is that a crime?" But Derek didn't budge. His grip was firm, his presence overwhelming, and I couldn't move an inch. "Why did you delete my number?" Derek had only just realized I deleted his contact. I rolled my eyes, barely holding back my frustration. I deleted you because you never responded to my messages anyway. If there's something with David, you can contact my mom. He snapped, his voice sharp. Why did you delete my number 3 years ago? I sent you so many messages, and not a single one was answered before you deleted me. I fell silent instantly. Those were old matters. Why bring them up now? I tried to avoid the question, but Derek wasn't done. So you can forget everything, forget the promises you made to me, forget the things we did together. His voice turned cold, his gaze intense as he grabbed my chin, forcing me to look at him. You can love someone so intensely, but then just throw them aside when you stop. Jessica, sometimes I really wonder if you ever truly loved me. What were those 3 years? Was I just a distraction for you during college? I'd never heard Derek speak like this, with a crack in his voice. His usual cold and distant demeanor was replaced with something raw and vulnerable. Say something. Can't you say even one word to me now? His voice trembled as he pulled me into his arms. The familiar embrace, his scent, made my heart race. I didn't know how to react. My mind was a blank, and I instinctively wrapped my arms around his waist. Jessica, why are you doing this to me? For 3 years, every day I've wondered what I did wrong. Why did you condemn me without saying a word? In the quiet, dark stairwell, his words sounded hollow and sorrowful. I went to church countless times, prayed before God, hoping you'd forgive my mistakes. I even thought that if there were a devil, I'd make a deal with him, exchange everything I have just to be with you again. The weight of his words hit me, and I couldn't hold back the tears. 3 years felt like a lifetime of pain and longing, and I too had suffered. Tell me what I did wrong. I'm willing to change. I can't stand the thought of you with someone else. His grip tightened around me, and I felt a tear fall onto my cheek. I'm sorry, I whispered, after a long silence, my voice barely audible. I don't want to hear your apology, Derek said, his tone steady but full of determination. I just want us to start over. He bent his head, resting it against my neck. I felt his body shudder, and instinctively, I lifted my hand to pat his back gently. All right, I said softly, the weight in my chest lifting as I spoke those words. Derek immediately pulled back, staring at me in disbelief for a long moment. Really? You won't leave me again, right? No, I replied, my voice steady but thick with emotion. I've wanted to be with you since you came back, but fear gripped me, fear of rejection, of him not forgiving me, of reliving that moment when I turned him away. When I finally returned home with the salt, David was already full, his stomach bloated. Why were you so late? I saved you some shrimp, he said. I sat down to eat, but David suddenly stared at me, his eyes wide. Sis, why are your lips swollen? I froze, panic rising. The kiss on the stairs, I hadn't controlled myself well. It's nothing. The cold wind outside made them swell, I quickly mumbled, brushing it off. Later that night, as I was about to fall asleep, David burst into my room. Jessica, are you and Mr. Derek together now? I jolted upright in bed, startled by David's sudden comment. How do you know that? I asked, trying to maintain my composure. Well, when I went to find Derek, I saw him. He even bought me something to eat and said I can call him Buddy outside of school, David said, clearly pleased with the new information. I couldn't believe Derek had spilled the beans like that. After David went to bed, I thought I'd gotten away from the conversation, but the next morning, it was clear that my mother already knew. She stared at me intently over breakfast. So, are you and Derek seeing each other? I choked on my milk. How do you know that? I asked. David told me, she said smugly. I knew there was something between you two. She raised an eyebrow. Derek doesn't look like someone who's short on money. So why is he living in our old neighborhood and coming over so often? It's obviously for you. I buried my face in my plate, not daring to speak, while my mom looked smugly pleased. That evening, when I went to pick up David, Derek insisted on coming along. We were just walking upstairs when my mom ran into us. Hello, Derek. Are you coming over for dinner later? She asked cheerfully. Leave it to my mom to switch from a formal Mr. Derek to a friendly, familiar tone in no time. Yes, Mrs. Susan, Derek replied, all polite and agreeable. At dinner that night, David looked miserable. I should have never tried to set you two up. Having dinner with my mouth full feels so awkward, David muttered. Derek overheard him just as he was finishing the dishes, and with that knowing, almost amused smile on his face, I knew David was in trouble. Under Derek's constant motivation, David managed to pull off decent grades in his finals, but it didn't take long for him to get stressed out again. Derek was constantly coming around as a classic last-minute kind of student, and David soon found himself overwhelmed. One day, in a full meltdown, he turned to me and said, "Jess, you need to move out. I can't take Derek being here all the time anymore. I just can't handle it." But it was too late for that. As expected, David's elementary school years were now going to be spent under Derek's watchful eye. Time passed, and the weather started to warm up. I was hurrying home, holding an ice cream cone, when I ran into a familiar woman at the entrance to my building. She removed her sunglasses and smiled at me. "Got a minute? Let's talk," she said. It was Derek's mother. I'd heard she was the chairman of a listed company. The last time I saw her was before my graduation when she came to my school to meet me. "You and Derek aren't right for each other," she had told me then. "He doesn't want to pursue his graduate studies abroad because of you. If you really love him, let him go. Don't hold him back." I'd imagined that Derek and I were like the lead characters in a romance story, destined to overcome any obstacle and be together in the end. But the reality was different. Derek could have had a better life, but he had slowed down for me. I was afraid that in 20 years, our love would fade away, consumed by the mundane details of daily life, and that he would resent me for holding him back. That's why we broke up. Now, after getting back together, I knew I would eventually see his mother again. She led me to a cafe and handed me a check without hesitation. "You understand what I mean, don't you?" she asked. I smiled sweetly and accepted the check. "Thank you for the gift. Don't worry, Derek and I will be happy forever." Her expression changed slightly. "Don't misunderstand. This money is to separate you two. You and Derek aren't right for each other. Don't hold him back. 3 years ago, you said the same thing. We broke up, but 3 years later, he still came back to find me. Doesn't that say it all?" "That's because you seduced my son," Derek's mother clenched her fists. I calmly pushed the check back toward her. "If you could convince Derek, you wouldn't be here trying to force me into something. You don't accept me, that's fine. But the one caught in the middle is him, not me. You've changed so much compared to 3 years ago." Her words struck a chord with me. I've been through a lot in the past 3 years. Changes were inevitable. 3 years ago, you never even mentioned me to Derek. It surprised me, so I told him the truth, that I was the one who broke you two up. He was angrier than he's ever been. Derek's mother sighed. "Then take the gift and goodbye." She said those words with a finality that left no room for argument and quickly left. Just as I was about to leave the cafe, I received a call from Derek. "Where are you?" "At the cafe? Did my mom come to see you?" I didn't care for coffee, so Derek instantly guessed what had happened. "Yes, but this time, she's willing to bless us." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and I could only hear his soft breathing. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" "It's all right now. We've weathered the storm and can finally see the light." I waited for a while in the cafe, and soon Derek arrived, out of breath and clearly in a rush. "I'm not going anywhere," I said with a light laugh, walking over to hug him. "I told you I wouldn't leave you again." He nodded silently, not saying a word. It seemed like I still had to take the lead. I pulled out a small box from Derek's car and tossed it in front of him. "Get on your knees." Derek froze for a moment, then asked, "Are you sure?" "I'll give you 3 seconds. If you don't kneel, I won't marry you." 1, 2. Derek immediately knelt on one knee, opening the box to reveal a delicate sapphire ring. The sun was shining perfectly, and a few people who were out for a walk stopped in their tracks when they saw him kneeling outside the cafe. Before I knew it, a small crowd had gathered. The ring was beautifully crafted, with a sapphire embedded in it, symbolizing loyalty and devotion. "When did you buy this ring?" I asked, gazing at him. He smiled softly, locking eyes with me, his gaze filled with warmth. "March 16th. A day I will never forget." It was the day I realized I might be falling in love with Jessica. She first caught my attention when she rushed up to me to exchange contact information. Ever since, she's always been in my sight. I couldn't help but watch her every move, and when she'd come close, I'd pretend to be nonchalant. She was always so lively. Wherever she went, there was always laughter. She told me I was too quiet and that we were made for each other. If that was the case, then we should be together. March 16th was our first day together. She rested her head on my shoulder, telling me I was handsome and that just standing there, she liked me. She was quirky but knew when to draw the line. I had never felt my heart race so distinctly, as if every one of my emotions was being tugged by her every action. I grew up with divorced parents, and to me, love had always seemed like a rare and fleeting pursuit, a high-minded ideal and something I didn't necessarily need. Why bother with romance when life could go on without it? But Jessica changed all of that. She broke down so many of my beliefs. My boundaries kept lowering with every passing day because of her. But whenever I got angry, she'd always come behind me and spoil me with affection. She was wonderful, and being with her, I felt truly alive. Throughout college, we were inseparable. I started thinking that our relationship should take the next step, maybe marriage, to legally defend our love, to always protect each other, never to part. I began preparing, picking out a ring, reserving the venue. Though busy, I felt incredibly happy, counting down the days. May 28th was a day I will never forget. It had been 1,137 days since we fell in love. A torrential rain had started that day, making it less than ideal for a proposal, but everything was ready. I took her to a restaurant, but she was unusually quiet, and I had a bad feeling. The florist had said they couldn't deliver the flowers on time, which made me angry, but I decided to wait a little longer. Fortunately, I had some jokes prepared to cheer her up, but she wasn't laughing. Instead, she told me she wanted to break up. It was hard to believe that a simple joke could be so devastating, ending my love in one swoop. I couldn't accept the reality. I begged for an explanation, sending her countless messages until I saw the red exclamation mark. That's when I finally understood, it was over. For a long time, I couldn't figure out what went wrong. I had never encountered such a tricky problem and didn't even know what I had done wrong. Eventually, I went to Germany. I met all sorts of passionate women there, and one even handed me a card, saying she could let me experience true fiery love. But I had already experienced it, love that was both fire and ice. I became obsessed with praying in church. The priest told me that with enough sincerity, I could cleanse my sins. Perfect. I needed that, but God didn't listen. I felt abandoned, just as I had been the moment she left me. Jessica, the big liar, I muttered to myself. My professor wanted me to stay in Germany, but I wanted to go back and see her. I wanted to enjoy the same sunlight with her, to feel the wind that might carry a kiss from her. In class, there was a boy named David. Every time I saw him, I thought of her. It was strange. He was mischievous, but his eyes resembled hers. I never imagined I'd run into her again. I tried to suppress my feelings, not letting my madness show in front of her. 3 years had taught me many things, like how to draw simple sketches the same way she had taught me. I learned how to hide my feelings, pretending not to care, even though I was dying inside, just like her pretending to be unaffected when I was deeply in love. Over those 3 years, I learned the truth. There was nothing wrong with our feelings. They had simply run their course. She just didn't want me anymore. But I couldn't accept her being with someone else. That made me jealous. I hated the people she dined with and resented anyone who came near me. I didn't know how Laura found out my address, but she wouldn't leave until I called the police. After that, I decided to move. I bought the apartment across from hers at a high price, and when I saw her open the door, my mood instantly lifted. December 25th was another unforgettable day. I had experienced extreme emotional highs and lows. I was afraid I'd never have another chance, but luckily, she hadn't given up on me. April 16th was the day I proposed. November 30th was our wedding day. I circled the dates on my calendar, and I could still hear her laughter in my ears. Derek, you're so old-fashioned. Who still uses a calendar to remember dates? Can't you just remember them? Of course I couldn't. I'd never take the chance of her forgetting.